I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, March the 16th, brought to you in part by YTEX Tags. Hysteria, and I'm not talking about a Def Leppard album, I'm talking about the craziness that has ensued over this coronavirus or the COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, but just unbelievable. I mean, closing, canceling, everything. By Sunday evening, 3 states had already closed all their bars and restaurants. That's unbelievable. Every sporting event has been canceled pretty much. Your people in Washington have suggested that we not have any gatherings more than 50 people. So in turn, you know, a lot of these bigger cities are doing that. Oklahoma City banned gatherings of more than 50 people. There was some talk whether Oklahoma National Stockyards were going to be closed on Monday morning. They've got a super light run anyway, just around 12 to 1500 or so. They are going to start a little later at 9, but for the most part, if they limit you know, tourists and stuff from coming in there, that they can get by with less than 50 people. And you know, your cattle people, your ag people are not super afraid of this thing. They're used to dealing with sickness in cattle and things like that. They know things can spread, but you know, this whole is just went crazy. You know, the flu, the regular flu is very catching, and a lot of us, I don't get a flu shot, you know, every fall or early winter. And I know that I'm going to feel like shit for 2 or 3 days sometime during the winter. And I usually do. Sometimes I get by without it. But then I get better and I go on. But sometimes the flu kills elderly people or people that's had their immune system compromised. And that's kind of what this deal is. But just unbelievable how people have just gone insane about the whole deal. And you know, you can't buy a roll of toilet paper anywhere, and I'm not sure why the big rush on the toilet paper, because I don't think this deal, you know, loosens your stool at all, but I guess they think they're not ever going to get back in, but to the grocery store, and they're going to be quarantined forever, but it's just unbelievable how this thing has grown. It is you know, just wiped out our stock market, down almost 20%. Our cattle market's just sharply lower. It's just terrible. People are really going to get hurt in this deal, and not just a little bit. But then at the same time, you see the meat case is completely cleaned out, and I think this is key to trying to help us get our markets kind of put back together a little bit, even before we get past this coronavirus deal. But we had a lot of talk late last week and over the weekend about what we can do, some things we can do to try to help this. I know there was several people getting in touch with congressmen, talking with people with the USDA. I know my friends Lee Richmuth and Jess Peterson with U.S. Cattlemen's Association. We're talking to the higher ups of the USDA. And it appears that sometime here today on Monday, we're going to have some kind of a statement that comes out that you know, encourages these plants to stay open. That's been the biggest fear here mid to late last week, that they were going to close the packing plants, but I think they're going to put some safeguards in there, maybe do some temperature checking and things as workers are coming in, and keep those plants open, because we've got to have product. People have to have something to eat, and it's probably going to be similar, you know, in produce and different things like that, because people have to have something to eat, and they're going crazy on these binge buying sprees and cleaning out the shelves, and we've got to keep product coming in there. I know President Trump there on Sunday afternoon come in, and they made a statement about keeping these grocery stores open, so maybe these people won't go so nuts going in there and just buying stuff up on fears and hysteria again. So that's a good thing. We're getting some good things done. I can't imagine what President Trump could have done to help keep us safe any more than he already did. If he hadn't have put that travel ban from China in weeks and weeks ago, no telling how bad this deal would have got. It's still spreading, but now he's pretty much shut off Europe altogether. So he's doing the things to try to help. They've lowered the interest rate. The Fed lowered the interest rate again, and pretty soon they're going to start going the other way, I guess, because we're almost down to zero. So we've really gotten that dropped, and the bad thing is we've gotten all the way to the bottom now, which I don't really see how they could drop it any further. We had a 1/4%, but we'll see if that helps. It didn't appear that overnight on Sunday it was going to help the stock market, because when they tell you that they're shutting all the bars and restaurants, sit-down restaurants down in California, Illinois, Ohio, that hurts. And that's a bigger deal than any kind of a safeguard you can put in. But a lot of people talking on social media and things, and I know that's not always the best place to look, but about what the government can do to help the cattle people. Well, what do we want the government to do? Do we want, subsidies? Indemnity. I'm not sure what we want the government to do to help us. Your cattle people, as hard as it is, have always been able to stand up tall and say, we don't take cheese checks, like the dairy industry does, like the grow crop industry does, like most industries do. But we want a level playing field. We want to be able to make a living. And I do think that one thing that we could ask the government to do is help institute this minimum percent volume of negotiated cash sales. I think we could get that done and then stand back and just let the markets work after that. We know we're not going to get the Packer monopoly busted up, but they could at least set that. And I don't know if it needs to be a law, but they've done things like that before. Mandatory price reporting is a law that they put in. They re-up it every 5 years. And I don't know that it's really helped anything. I think we could probably enforce that minimum volume negotiated cash trade deal. I think we could enforce that through mandatory price reporting, and we wouldn't have to make another law. That mandatory price reporting has confidentiality rules, the 370-20 rule that protects the packers' confidentiality. How about protecting your cash, negotiated cash sellers' confidentiality, and then not reporting that any of those percentage, any of those weighted averages, any of those highs for the week, any of those prices that they're using to base these formulas off of. Don't report that unless there's been a minimum volume of negotiated cash sales. Your packers have always been big on minimum volume. If you got the high for the week, there had to be enough cattle to sell there. Well, we're getting so thin on our negotiated cash trade now that we've got to go in there and set a minimum for that. I think we could get the leverage back in this cattle market if we do that. There's a lot of other things we could do that have to do with trade, have to do with labeling, have to do with this, have to do with that. Some people talked about maybe tying your fat cattle price to your cutout value. I don't know about that. That's scary when you do that. It hasn't happened for a while, but there's times where the cattle were high enough that they didn't make sense with the cutout value. We want to leave ourselves open on the top end to make as much as we can, and there's times where packers do lose money, and when they really need product and we're about to get supplies back in our favor. If we had some leverage, maybe, not that we want the packers to lose money, but why would we want to limit the upside? And if there's any price that packers can manipulate very easily, it's your box beef cutout values. They literally set the price for that, and it has way more to do with volume than it does the price on that, because that's what they do, and they're tougher on that end than they are on the cattle end. But they sure got the cattle business buffaloed. But the same thing goes with your feeder cattle. You know, your calves and yearlings have been sharply lower. We don't know what to do for sure. You know, even your lightweights, you know, and my gosh, what they have to do with the coronavirus, I'll never know. But they're just responding to that cash fat cattle market, and then they're going down. They're responding to the board. I hear tell that there's a lot of grazing interests, even in the Flint Hills, the Osage, and in your major grazing areas that don't have their cattle put together yet. You'd think they'd be getting in on some of these cheaper calves. I mean, some of these light calves, $15, $17 lower this last week. And you think, well, how low are they? What could we do? Well, I talked to my old buddy Ellison Carter there in Santo, Texas. He's got jillion order buyers out there putting cattle together to ship in those little small sale barns in Central Texas there. And he said they was a lot cheaper there all of last week, of course, but he said people are starting to see how cheap they are. And he said on Saturday, the few sales they have on Saturday, noticeably higher on the light calves. But he shared with me what the light calves were costing that he shipped on Sunday. Upgrading kind of cattle. You guys can buy them. You gotta keep them up for a couple, 3 weeks or so, and make sure the health on them's good, and then turn those babies out and watch them grow. Said the condition on the cattle is really, really good. But I had some light Pee-wee steers. An order there weighed 275 at 162. A little bit bigger 335-pound steers and bulls at 160. 355 pounders at 155. Some steers and bulls, but good quality, weighing 4 1/4 at 149, and a group of 525 pounders at 142. On the heifer side, Pee-wee heifers, 350 pounders at 134, 425 pounders at 131, and some 550 pound heifers at 127. You can talk to Ellison, EllisonCarterCattle.com. But you know, there's some bargains out there, guys, and you ought to get in on them. We've got to get this fat cattle market back. There's been a big stand from a lot of cash sellers. I'm telling you guys right now, this is what we've been needing, and desperate times bring about desperate measures, and finally we've maybe done something. All your cash guys out there are going to try to make a stand at 115 this week. Why they decided to do 115 and not 120, I don't know. But your packers can afford it. Box beef cutout values are the same as they were 3-4 weeks ago when the market was better than 115. So 115 is kind of where they're at. And you guys that are selling cash fat cattle, don't take less than 115. Yeah, you. I'm talking to you. And I know you only have one load or something. They're trying to make a stand, guys. Everybody's getting together. All your cash feedlots are getting together. Call around and talk to the guys. And make a stand at 115, and you say, but the basis so good because your April live cattle are down 95.5. I don't care. The basis will be that much better if you can hold the cash market up there. And I don't care if you are hedged and you're looking at that basis. It'll still be better if you get a better cash price. 115. I talked to Casey Bradshaw there with Consolidated Beef Producers. They're on the deal. 115. If you're having a hard time getting your cattle sold, call Consolidated Beef Producers, CBP, headquartered right here in Canyon, Texas. They've kind of had a change up in the management. I think it's for the better. And I guarantee you they will help you get your cattle marketed. That's what they do. They're trying to get some leverage through numbers, and that's what they're doing. They're selling cattle all over the country, but especially in the Southern Plains, Texas and Kansas, but also up in the north and even on the outskirts. Those guys can really help you. You know, quit fretting about selling your cattle. Give it up to them, and they can get them sold, and they're all on the 115 stand too. So guys, try to make that work. Show you can do it, and then maybe we don't need government intervention. Just get your heads together. I know it's a lot harder to get 400 heads together than it is 4, but we gotta try somehow. Let's look at your board for last week. April live cattle futures. Monday was down $2.90. Tuesday was up $2.60. Wednesday down $2.37. Thursday down the $3 limit. Friday down the $4.50 expanded limit, with April live cattle futures ending the week at 95.57, $10 lower for the week. June 89.75, down $10.27 to end the week, that much lower compared to the end of the previous week. March feeder cattle, Monday down the limit $4.50, Tuesday back up $1.55, Wednesday down $4.42, Thursday down the $4.50 limit, Friday down $5.82, and several of the contracts were down $6.75. The limit expanded on Friday. But March feeder cattle ended the week at 113 even, down $17.70, guys. It's going to go back up. When we get some confidence back in this deal, I'm going to. Why don't you guys get on and ride it back up? There's money to be made there. Don't even have to get your boots dirty. April feeder cattle, 112.60 the end of the week. That was down $17.45. That would be pretty nice change to put in your pocket, because we were at where cattle needed to be before all this started, and actually a little bit undervalued. So we've got a lot of room to grow on here. And if we ever get any confidence back in this country, back in our health, back in our food supplies and all this thing, this deal is going to take off, $20-some, and it'll be a fun ride. Your fat cattle trade through Thursday, it sold 98,500 head in your 5-area feeding region, negotiated cash. Remember, 115 this week, guys. Don't take less. Last week, we sold cattle from 105 to 110. It was mostly $8 lower, because we probably had more 105 than anything, and it was 113 the previous week. But we were 110 early in the week, and that was lower, and then it got even worse than that. And your later trades, like on Thursday, were mostly 105 and 106. Like I said, mostly $8 lower, and then it pepped back up there just a little bit at 108 for some ending sales in the Southern Plains. And most of that had to do with the fact that these packers are short bought, and it's time to take advantage of them for a change. Time to make a stand and force the 115 on them. They can pay it, they can afford it, not going to hurt them a bit. They need cattle. They're short bought. People are selling cattle last week and the week before that they had 2 weeks to pick them up, and they called for them already. They're calling for the cattle. They're pulling cattle way ahead. Yeah, we've got a lot of cattle on feed. Yeah, we're going to have big market-ready supplies when we get into the summer months, but not right now. Right now it's fairly tight, and they're hungry for cattle. They don't have enough in their captive supplies. Time to take advantage. They're actually going to speed up the chain speeds a little bit to get these orders filled. Yeah, the restaurants aren't doing much business. Some of them are shut down, but we've got to keep the supermarkets full. But dress sales, 175 early, mostly 170 late. That was mostly $10 lower and as much as $12 lower than the previous week. Don't forget 115. Box beef cutout values, look, they haven't been hurt all week. The last 3 weeks on the weighted average, and I use the weighted average at the end of the week because that's where all the volume's at. So for the week last week, choice cuts averaged 207.15, up 21 cents from the previous week when it was higher. And it was higher the previous week to that. All through this coronavirus, your box beef cutout values choice have been higher. Friday was higher than the weighted average. Friday they were at 208.14. So, this is getting ridiculous. Select cuts for last week, the weighted average, 199.48. On Friday it was almost 202, but that 199.48 on the weighted average of last week's select cut sales, down $2.32. Choice select spread, $7.67. Pretty good movement last week, 689 loads. Let's talk about your feeder cattle more. Actually, let's talk about the slaughter real quick. 630,000 last week, was 17,000 less than the previous week, but up 22,000 from the same week a year ago. And here tell that they're going to run the chain speeds a little bit quicker. Like I said just a minute ago, they're going to try to keep the workers in there, keep those plants open, and keep the food supply coming to these stores. Your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DV auction, ended the week at 127.03. That was down $7.30 on the 7-day moving average compared to last week, and just sharp losses. And so if that was a 7-day moving average just on your 12 states for an average 800-pound steer, the 7 to 899 pounders, your cash feeders were sharply lower, $6 to $15 lower, and that's calves and yearlings, just everything sharply lower. But light receipts, of course, because people were scared to bring cattle in. Like I said, Oklahoma City's only got around 1,500. They're going to start a little bit later. There'll probably be people there from the city because the mayor had called for no more than 50 people in the gathering, so they probably won't let everybody that wants to go in, and I'm sure there'll be some onlookers to come into the sales arena, but that's what they're going to do there. Joplin's calling for 2,000 head there. I'm pretty sure the city of Carthage, Missouri is not going to put a limit on what they can do around there. But $6 to $15 lower in the sales for your feeder cattle and calves. I'll give you a couple of top quotes, and I'm sure not calling anybody out. These are top quotes. Late in the week, last Friday there, St. Ann, South Dakota, buddy Justin Tupper there sold some 6 weights pretty good for the way things are. 53 head of 641-pound steer calves bring $147.50. And this is the best test I saw on straight up feeder cattle. Mankato Livestock, Mankato, Kansas, 64 head, 750-pound steers, $125, people. That's your feeder flash for Monday.